So we're going to start just with a discussion for each of our panelists, and hopefully we'll have some time for some questions here. And so I'm going to sit down and go ahead and get started. Russ, I wanted to start with you because, as I mentioned, this really did start with a Grimmway conversation. And I know some people are very familiar with your operation, but if you could start out and just talk about being one of the world's largest carrot producers, tell us about your operation and how this fits into the circular economy discussion. It should be on. You're on.
So you can hear me. Okay. Yeah, I'm Russ. Wow. I'm Russ Hamlin. I'm president of farming operations for Grimmway. I'm a transplant to California, I think maybe you could tell. But Grimmway is a diversified vegetable company located in Bakersfield, California. We had humble beginnings. Rod and Bob Grimm, who were the founders of Grimmway, actually started with a farm stand in Anaheim, California, selling corn to that local community. They eventually moved to Bakersfield and grew their business not only conventionally but organically. And here, some 50 years later, Grimmway is one of the largest carrot producers in the world and one of the largest organic vegetable producers in the nation. So it is one of the most complex farming outfits that I've ever heard of or worked for. We supply year-round over 65 different kinds of organic vegetables. We have about 6,500 different individual plantings of crops each year, all of which are individually managed. Growing both conventionally and organically is a challenge. But of the crops that we grow, carrots are definitely the most interesting. It is one of the most value-added crops that we grow, and probably one of the most diversified kind of vegetables anywhere. So back before 1980, the vast majority of carrots that you would have bought would have been the long, big carrots called cello carrots. But at some point, some really smart person figured out that you can take all of the off-type carrots that are broken or don't look just right and shave them down and make something called a baby carrot. Today, that baby carrot is the hottest selling carrot product on the market, and there was a time when it was a waste product. Since then, carrots have evolved into many of the products that you eat. Grimmway makes every conceivable carrot product, from coins to carrot sticks to shreds. We even do juice. And I think that one of the big messages here today is that every part of the carrot, even the parts that are waste, are not wasted. There is a productive use for that, and that is a big need in agriculture today, is to find those ways that even waste products can be useful. But the circular part of this, and I must admit it's quasi-circular, the circular part of this is that I grow carrots. Some of that waste is sent to cows. Those cows use the bathroom. Some of that's made into compost, and that compost is then used to fertilize organic carrots, and that is a semi-circle. It's pretty hard to find that in agriculture, but that's how that fits in.
Thank you very much. And Justin, you're a big part of this equation as well. Tell us about your operation and how you work with Grimmway.
So we are actually one of the users of these coal carrots, the byproduct. You know, when he talked about the juice, how there's that's carrots that have already been made a baby carrot out of and then juiced further. So that's the byproduct of a byproduct. And what we do is we feed the carrots to cows, and we have our own line of beef. My grandfather in the 1980s tried to buy a stack of hay from one of the carrot growers in our town, and he said, "What can you do with these waste carrots as well?" And I remember being a 3-year-old kid on a 3-wheeler irrigating hay fields in the middle of the night, with recycled rinse water. And over time, the baby carrot was invented, and that evolved. And about 7 years ago, my father and I were making bread heifers, which are pregnant females, for during the drought. So when most people don't have grass, we have carrots available because of our relationship with Grimmway. And so we were making pregnant females, and a few of them, they wouldn't breed up, and those were always kind of the nuisance. And so we tried finishing them, and we the first one, we ate it and tried it and went, gosh, this is so good. This is going to be a lot of work now because we have to do something with it. And from there, we tried 10 or 12 after that, and then it's really grown. And so our entire program is based on using the coal carrots and the byproduct from Grimmway Farms. So we're a verified grass-fed program. We finish our cattle on carrots. Carrots are about 95% of the diet. And but the grass hay that's fed alongside of the carrots is grown with Sudan grass from Grimmway Farms as well. So when they rinse the carrot, they'll use that water a few times, and then it goes out to be to the fields, and they can grow silage crops or whatnot with it. And this Sudan grass fits very well with our program. We are one of the few U.S. grass-fed companies that can grade choice and prime because of it, and it's a very consistent product. So as long as the carrots are consistent and the grass hay is consistent along with it, which it is, we are able to scale up and take a very large vegetable farming company and kind of close that loop using their waste, their byproducts from the food waste side to the water waste side, and really bring it down and upcycle it into a white tablecloth product.
That's just, it's fascinating. You should see his website as well. It's really cool the way that you've expressed all the things that you're sharing with us. And Elizabeth, you're involved in this in slightly different ways with Netafim. So talk about how you're using that manure to actually reutilize the nutrients in operations and through drip irrigation systems.
Yes, so we actually have a solution where we take the manure or the waste product from the dairies and are able to reuse that into a circular agricultural economy where we're able to reuse it. So basically the cows eat their nutrient-rich diet and process the food and then produce waste. From there, we have like a wet barn system where we actually rinse down all the areas where the manure and waste is located. It goes into a holding pond, and then it travels through a screen into another secondary pond, and then we're able to take that manure and filter it with fresh water and irrigate a crop. So it goes out through subsurface drip irrigation, so SDI, and then the E is for the effluent. So the mixture between the fresh water and the effluent water goes out to feed directly into the crop, and it provides the nutrients directly to the roots. So we're able to create the system. It reduces the water usage, it improves the yield, and then once the crop is produced, it is fed back to the cows, and it's all circular.
Terrific. So what kind of cost savings are we talking about when you're using these sorts of systems?
The effluent water is so rich in nutrients that most dairy farmers don't have to apply any fertilizers back onto their crop. So basically they're reusing all of it from the waste product. It saves about $150 to $200 an acre. And then it's the savings in water as well because you're able to blend the effluent water with your fresh water.
Thank you. And as a reminder, please submit any of your questions through Slido so we can get those answered as well. And Russ, I'd like to turn it back over to you. What would be, obviously there's savings from being able to reuse different outcomes from the carrot operation, but what would be the outcome if you didn't have these pathways?
That's a good question. The thing that would still remain would be the waste product. So we would have to figure out where else to go with that. I think maybe there would be 3 options that we would have to consider. 2 are productive, 1 is absolutely not. The two productive options would likely be composting the waste as a vegetable compost. The other would be taking that vegetable waste and spreading it over agricultural land and disking it in to add to the nutrient and organic matter value of the soil. Those are productive options for using that waste, but it's a little more complicated than what I just said. You typically do not want to use a compost made of the same vegetables that you're trying to grow, because you can promote plant diseases in those fields that are common to that crop. And so it's a little more difficult than that. The third option that is not productive and is the easiest is to dispose of that waste in a landfill system, which we would never choose to do. But it gets more complicated if you take away the cattle industry.
And Justin, back to you, and there's a question that actually came in on water restraints as well, that in some areas that water constraints can result in lawsuits against ranchers. But you've shared with us that because of the feed source, that cows actually consume less water, and that you're actually saving on the water front. So explain that.
Well, that's correct. So carrots are 85 to 90% water, depending on what piece of the carrot you're getting or how small. But when the cattle are eating that much of it, one, it makes a great flavor profile for the cattle because of all the extra carrot juice in the meat. But two, on the production side, we save over half of the water that it would conventionally take to finish an animal. If the carrot, let's say there's a holiday and the carrot plant doesn't run for a couple days and their diet is mostly hay, we really see the water usage on the ranch go up. But when the daily fresh carrot deliveries are coming in every single day, we see our water usage go way down, over half of what the cattle would normally have on a non-moist diet or wet diet that come from the carrots. We're saving that much in water. So we see a lot of benefit to that too. I know, the water, California is just having, we're going through water issues, but I think at the same time, we're going to see a lot of innovation like what we're doing come from it. And this is one of the good ones. Even on the wastewater or the rinse water side from Grimmways, that we get to use sedan grass or forages grown so the water's actually used multiple times before it gets to the ranch. So we get every drop of water is used multiple times to actually add value to it.
And if I remember correctly, the distance between the operations and the travel for this isn't very far either, so it's not like
It's incredible that a lot of the dairies sometimes, they could be from Bakersfield to Fresno, Bakersfield to Tulare, and you can have 50, 60 mile an hour one way to these dairies. Well, we're 10 miles from Grimmway, so we really get to have a 20-mile turnaround, which makes less equipment needed as far as coal carrots going into trailers, and it also takes the trucks off the road. We've all driven up the 99 or the 5 so many times, and so we get to really alleviate the trucks on the road, cut back on emissions that way, and make more of a closed loop. I feel like 100 years ago, a lot of farms were 40 acres, and people fed scraps and whatnot to their pigs or their cows. And so as the population's grown and supply chains have really grown as well, I feel like that we could still have that closed loop model as long as we have the good relationships, like with Grimmway, from their food waste and the forages they're growing, into also being right down the street, right next door, and adding that extension of where to go with some of these products. So I think it's just beneficial all the way around as we've built our operation based on their growth.
And thank you for some of the questions that are coming in. One of those is around the issue of food safety. And Elizabeth, there's a question about manure being applied through drip at the field level. Are there food safety, or what kind of best practices need to be employed?
Well, the water, let's see, so the question after that is how do the drip lines keep clean? So basically, start with that, because after the water is blended with the fluent water, it goes through a filter system and then is delivered out into the field. The crops that it's going to are not consumed by consumers. They're going straight to the animals, so they're not food crops. And of course, they're always being tested to make sure that there's no pathogens or anything of the sort. What was the other question?
Just about any food safety concerns that would eventually, and it really is probably more for Russ in terms of all the testing that I'm sure has to be done.
Yeah, we don't use animal effluent to irrigate edible crops. That would be a no-no.
That's the thing that I think a lot of people don't recognize is just all the regulatory and the food safety monitoring that is done with all the growing of crops in California. There's just a lot of safety precautions that have to be taken. So what else in terms of, Elizabeth, for you, for NRCS has been a real player, and there's a lot of IRA money that's out there right now. If growers are interested in using any of your systems, are there cost share? Are there any sorts of ways to facilitate the purchase of these systems?
Yes, there is, as a matter of fact. So the NRCS has money available. It's mostly a cost savings. There's also Equip. There's the Dairy Plus. So there's a variety of different fundings that are available. Right now, the biggest one is the Equip, which pays $2,971 per acre. A typical system would be approximately $5,600 per acre. And that's all in. And obviously, if you add a lot of bells and whistles, there'd be additional costs. But there is cost savings available, and it does have a good ROI because it helps pay back, and we're able to use more of what typically would not be used at all for the waste product.
Absolutely. Russ, when you first started thinking about these systems, I'm sure that you've had with all your experience in the business, without giving up any trade secrets or anything, how difficult really was it to develop not only your processing system, but your relationship and to get these outcomes with Justin that have been so important in your sustainability goals and the circular economy?
Yeah, I think finding any sort of a circular system, it can be a rare thing. I haven't really encountered them very often. Some of this actually happened way before I was in California, but I think that a lot of it happened naturally. As Justin said, at some point there was a carrot grower that had a waste product who approached a cattleman and wanted to know, is this valuable to you? And so I think that that relationship and the relationship between cows and carrots happened somewhat organically. I think that if you're looking for those kinds of relationships, that they're everywhere. And the limit is just based on our ability to think outside the box and to pursue them. I think that one of the things that you have to understand is what is your waste stream and what value does it have to someone else. And as long as you can determine that, you just find that other person that's a good partner in the community, like Santa Carota Beef, and you nurture that relationship. But I think in order to find those circular systems, you have to know your waste stream, you have to know what the value of it is, and I think importantly, you have to figure out how to reduce that waste stream so that there's not as much of it to deal with. That would also be a key. But I think that that those opportunities exist, and the limit of those is just based on our ability to go after them.
So maybe building on that for this other question about what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in developing this system, Justin, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? What are some of the challenges you face, and maybe what are some of the lessons you've learned that you can share with others?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we are using a waste stream. So we've learned to not make the tail wag the dog, because we can't determine how many coal carrots are coming in and out of the stream. We want to be there to support them. And so as long as we have communication is one of the biggest ones, and we let them know, Grimmway, so to speak, that, we have an opportunity with more cattle, or they let us know that they're coming into some bad fields, there's going to be a lot of extra product, or product's going to be limited. And so as long as there's a constant communication, we're not both going after two different goals, because at the end of the day, our number one priority is to service the plant and make sure they have a place to go with their coals, their byproduct, with their waste stream, because that keeps them going. And so as long as they are having productive business, then we can have productive business. We never want it to be our fault that there's any kind of production hiccup. So that's always been number one for us. And then two, as long as they appreciate that, they being Grimmway, as long as Grimmway appreciates having an outlet so close by and offering to work and be flexible, that Grimmway will always be flexible with us. And it's just always a great two-way street as far as communication and relationship. If they know they're long on carrots, we know we're going to need more cows to eat them. If their season's going to end shorter, we know that we're going to have to harvest or move some cows around to make the carrots match the cows. And it's taken over 30 years for us to learn how to make the carrots match the cows, because for so many times, you know, you got the cows and you can't get the carrots, and then you got the carrots and you can't get the cows. And so having the constant communication of what's coming down the pike, it's ag. We don't know everything, but we have a good idea of it. And then having additional outlets has really helped us as well. So some of the product from the juice plant, we actually dry on some old military tarmacs, and we make pet food with it. So when we're getting more carrots than we need for the cows, or we need some time to buy cows, we are able to solar dry a lot of the product, upcycle that as well, and actually get more value than what, say, a ground corn would be. So, and that stuff, like I said, is a byproduct of a byproduct. So big carrot, little carrot, pieces, they juice it all the way down the line. And so what they might call a waste stream, to us is an opportunity, as long as we're willing to risk it, let them know what risk we're taking, and find solutions for the problem. Then our communication and our relationship actually close that whole circle within itself. And I think it just happens organically, and it happens naturally, as long as we have their best interests and they have our best interests, and we're always watching each other's back, we're able to accomplish a lot, especially on a scale this size.
Thank you. Russ, we know that Grimmway is famous for carrots, but you also do produce other crops. So one of our questioners wanted to know whether or not this is an applicable model, carrots and cows, to other types of crops.
I've seen cows eat all kind of vegetables. I've seen cows eat broccoli and eggplant and squash and jalapeno peppers and carrots. It would not be something that is specifically limited to carrots. Now something that Justin would have to answer is, what is the food value of all of those other things compared to carrots? That would be, in my mind, an important question about how useful those would be to him. But certainly, I mean, every vegetable operation is going to have a coal stream. And I think that all of those coals can be put to good use, whether you feed them to cows or you make compost out of them or some other productive end. But yeah, cows eat a lot of stuff.
Justin, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, that's a whole nother market, and he's right. Cows will eat just about anything. We feed our cows early on some garlic peels from a garlic processor, and they actually, you can kind of smell it on them, but the flies, they do great with the flies. Kind of smells like you're going by like an old pizzeria or something, but really they roll in this stuff, and that is less pesticides or less chemicals or less vaccinations that we would ever have to give these cows. And so I think there's a lot of natural ways that we can use some of these waste streams to help the cows. But at the same time, I don't know that I would want to eat like a onion-fed cow, because, you know, we're up against the flavor profile too. And so much of what we do is we make sure the garlic's out of their system, the carrots are in their system, and there's some things that might make the meat taste a little funny. So, you know, if someone wants to try it, good luck. But we know that the carrots are very proven. They're full of sugar. So essentially, a cow's got to get its energy from starch or sugar. And the starch would be a grain or like potatoes. The sugar side, which is the carrots, It's a slower finish, but it's a very natural finish. So we end up testing with 0 sugars in the meat because the body converts 100% of those sugars to energy, and it really makes a great flavor. But as to what a cow eating eggplant tastes like or anything else, I'm not sure. But somebody's got to try it eventually.
So do you actually have a taste testing team at the ranch?
We know how long these cattle need to be on feed to actually get the moisture in the muscle because, like I said, the carrots are so high in moisture. If a cow's going to eat 10 pounds of grain, now he's got to eat 100 pounds of carrots to get the same 10 pounds of dry matter if it's 90% water, right? But all that water just fills that muscle tissue up, and it makes a very elasticity in the muscle. It fills it up with all these great carrot juices. So you do get this pop in your mouth like a berry, very light kind of an eating experience, and it tastes really good. Now, I've had cattle on potatoes before, not so much what the carrots do. I haven't had like a jalapeno one or an onion one, but it might be good, it might not. But we do know that with not enough time on the carrots, we don't get the right flavor profile, and consistent quality is something we want to put out because the carrots are always available, and so we want to have happy customers just like Grimmway does.
Thanks. Let's back up a little bit and just talk more broadly about the circular economy again. Elizabeth, question for you. Netafim started out in the Israeli desert, and so, obviously you have a long history with the company of producing more with less. Talk to us just a little bit about how what you're doing right now fits into the company's sustainability mission, and what kind of other new products you're out there with, just trying to make sure that when growers have the opportunity to go to market, that they can be more sustainable using some of your products and services.
So, Netafim is the drip irrigation manufacturer, and we started in Israeli. We're owned by a company called Orbia, and our whole purpose is doing more with less. We are driven on making sure that we bring more to the table, increase yields, reduce costs. I mean, we're trying to make a world for everyone to live in where we can do more with less. It's one of those things that is the reason I came to the company, because it's not about just making the almighty dollar. It's about making a future for all of us. And I think that we forget that sometimes, is that, we have these great ideas about what we should and should not do, but we don't look at the long term about what does it make sense it's going to be in our future? I mean, what are we doing and why are we doing it? So the new products that we've come out with, obviously using the effluent water is one of them. We also have come out with problems that other growers have had, like for the almond growers, they were having issues with harvest. So we came out with some drip tubing that actually has copper in it that they can bury, so that way they don't have to remove it before they harvest, which helps reduce their costs in production and harvest cost. We also come out with a new emitter that produces just a teeny amount of water, a 0.075 for some of our vegetable crops, so that way we're not over-applying water to the crop. So there's a variety of different things that come up, in our day-to-day operations there. We look up and go, hey, there's an idea here and we need to do something about it. So that's one of the things I love about where I work, is that we're constantly looking to do more with less.
Thank you. And Russ, you had posted something on LinkedIn not too long ago that kind of builds on this. You posted, good leaders understand that they are accountable to something greater than themselves and that they are stewards of everything under their charge. Tell us a little bit about why you felt that comment was important and how you deploy that.
I don't think that I can answer that question apart from my faith. I just want to acknowledge there are a lot of people in this room that have a lot of different faiths and belief systems. I'm a Christian. That message was posted on Good Friday. It was based on a verse from Psalms 24:1. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who dwell in it. And so in my personal leadership, there is something greater than myself that is motivating me to lead and to manage rightly, not only people in our business, but also our land, and the great responsibility of growing food for the American public. For other people, even people who are not of faith, there are great leaders who have a sense of something that is greater than themselves. Service people, it may be freedom that drives them. For a school teacher, it could be the great desire to see kids become more than what they expect themselves to be. But one thing is for certain, leaders and managers who are self-centered create prisons, and leaders who are selfless and invest themselves in the lives of other people create freedom and opportunity. And your employees know the difference. And so in my personal work life, I have seen servant leadership and I have seen selfish leadership. And that was really the basis for the comment.
Thank you. Very powerful. Justin, tell us a little bit about how you came about your sustainability mission with your operation. Just how it evolved with the family. I mean, you started as a firefighter.
Yeah, we actually, my whole family was firefighters. My grandfather was. My grandfather came out in the Dust Bowl. He was one of the Dust Bowl kids and lived in a tent till he was 12, and then his parents couldn't feed him, and he had to go out on his own, and was eventually picked up and adopted by a guy with a horse ranch in the mountains, and they started putting cows together, and then he was a fireman to subsidize an income, and then my dad, who's here in front of us today, he was a fireman for 20 years, and then so he could work on the ranch and grow the ranch and still have an income, and then my brother and I, we worked on hotshot crews, and so we fought fire so we could help on the ranch in the wintertime, and it's just been kind of a tradition of it. But I want to go back to what Russ was talking about, because that was really powerful. And I think that I felt like God had a plan for us since the beginning, and we just weren't scared to bite off more than we could chew and then ask for help from God. And I think that, we never wanted to let good enough be good enough. And so we've had to learn how to pack cattle and sell meat and do all these things that some people go to school for. And, we've only fought forest fires, but we did it anyway. And I think sometimes some of the biggest, especially what we see in the ranching industry, is, well, that's not how Grandpa did it. I know my grandpa was a fireman and my grandpa fed carrots, but my dad and I kind of moved the box a little bit that we were fitting in. And I think even what she was saying about how, we're changing and how to save water, and we used to flood irrigate, and now so we always have to be looking, not to just reinvent ourselves, but I feel like, is there a better way out there? And I think that's where the finishing carrots came in. That's where a lot of the growth mindset, how do we get out of this box and put ourselves in somewhere else, even though it's hard, it's challenging, we have to learn, we have to hire people we don't know what the future looks like, because what we're doing on the cattle side, it's very new. There's so much, there's very little vertical integration on the beef side because it's so broken up and cows go to different feedlots, and then someone else packs them and someone else sells them. Well, we do it all. And so not doing what Grandpa did, but still honoring and respecting it, how we got here, because the last every generation got us on the stage by getting up every morning and putting their work boots on. And we always want to respect that. But the way to honor that is, and all the opportunity that God's given us, I feel like, is what can we do with these opportunities, and how do we make them better, and how do we just push it? Because letting good enough being good enough isn't good, I don't feel like, to reinvent the wheel, feed the world, and honestly fight off any competition that might want to come in and take what we've built. And so I feel like honoring, respecting the previous generations, but also trying to do our part to add to it and bettering the operation along the way.
Thank you. So obviously we wanted to highlight these stories during our summit, and we'll have an article on this in our Agri-Pulse West newsletter that you'll be able to see tomorrow. But beyond the opportunity to work with our audience both here and online. Can each of you share a little bit about what do you do to communicate the, some people call this a very complex circular economy. In some ways it seems like there's been so much that's gone into it. How do you take those complex components of what you're doing and tell your story to a public that's pretty far removed from the farm? Elizabeth, can we start with you?
Well, we do panels like this and tell our story. If we don't give the story or tell other people, then it's never going to be heard. And basically, it's word of mouth for a lot of what we've done with the dairy. It has a lot to do with listening to the problems that you're hearing from the farmers and the growers and outside people like, hey, I have this problem, what can I do? So in coming up with a solution together, that makes a big difference, because it's not just somebody in a box coming up with, but this is what you should do and this should be how it goes. Working together and communicating, that's how you're able to actually brainstorm and come up with new ideas, because we do have a scarcity of land, water, and with climate change, there's so much affecting us. Without working together, we are never going to make it for generations to come.
Russ, can you share some thoughts on that, please?
I think maybe this has been the first time we have talked about having somewhat of a circular system at Grimmway. We certainly talk a lot about organic vegetables and carrots and all of those sorts of things. I think the most important thing that I would just want this audience to understand is that the individual businesses that make up the agricultural industry are interconnected. We depend on one another. It's not even something that we've thought about promoting. It's just normal course of business. But when you're a policymaker or you're making decisions in agriculture, it's important to understand that you can't bump one marble without bumping them all. If you really think that organic food is important, and you want to uphold and support and defend the organic industry, you also have to support, uphold, and defend those agricultural businesses on which that industry depends. And that would absolutely include the cattle industry and the poultry industry in the state of California. Whether you know it or not, the vast majority of fertilizers used in organic farming are animal-based. And so to do without those would cause tremendous industry to the organic growers in the state of California. But I'm glad to be here today and talk about this. I hesitate to call it a complete circular relationship, but it is somewhat circular. It's rare and important.
Justin?
Well, I think that transparency and authenticity are so important. And I also think that the world wants to know where their food comes from now. 30, 40 years ago, if you attached yourself to a big brand like a Coca-Cola or something, maybe that meant you were legit. But now everyone wants to know what field it was in or who grows it. And we're not exactly 7 degrees separated from our audience anymore. We have social media, we have panels like this. It's easier to reach out and touch people. And so I feel like if any of us that are authentic and if you're transparent, which is what we really believe in, then we should show the world, because if we don't, someone else who hasn't stepped foot on our ground might try to make that opinion about what we do for us. And I just feel like the more that we can show them what we do, we have ranch tours, we try to enlighten or educate people on our social media platforms, which I think is, you're really starting to see that on the farming side, ranching side. People are really getting involved in it, getting to know who's growing their food. And for anybody not doing that, I would recommend taking a second look at it, because if you've got nothing to hide, show the world what we're doing, because we do a lot of great things. We feed the country here in this great state, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, especially working with great people like this who are helping conserve water, bringing organic vegetables to every plate that they can, and then families like us that help kind of reuse, all of the waste streams that they've given us an opportunity to actually exist on a big platform in the ag industry. So I appreciate everyone up and down the line and anyone who is willing to answer questions and be transparent along the way as well.
I know that's helpful for a lot of folks. Elizabeth, we talked to you a little bit about NRCS and cost sharing. One of our questionnaires also wants to know, and I'll throw this out for all of the panelists if you'd like to chime in, and that is whether or not it makes sense to have additional incentives to move towards reuse and recycling, or should there be tax incentives, or should there be other things that, from a policy standpoint, need to be implemented in order to make sure that we do more in terms of a circular economy?
The answer is yes. Any additional help to help farmers, it would be appreciated. Tax benefits, if they're making the investment because it is cost sharing, it would be nice to have a better tax benefit. They're all related. Like I said, everyone's money is tight, and any extra help would be greatly appreciated by the farmer and the grower and be able to produce more. I'm sure Russ would say the same thing.
Absolutely. Take half of the budget and put it towards the development of new products from existing vegetables and other ag products. Can you imagine a world without baby carrots? I can't. We absolutely need to have money available for ag companies who are looking to do more with what they are already producing. That absolutely reduces waste streams. It opens up new product possibilities for those farmers. So investing in value-added vegetable and agricultural products is a very worthwhile thing, and I would highly encourage it. And the issue for a lot of companies is that they don't have the money to work on that sort of development, and so having a way to fund that and to see, well, what would a jalapeno-fed cow look like without a lot of risk? Those are areas of development that we should be investing in.
I think, access to capital is really very important for whether it's startup farmers and ranchers or anyone growing around it. That's one of the big hang-ups. I do have concern, though, that when the more the government gets involved, the more some of the smaller people can get left out because they don't know how to access programs. But I do think that there is a lot of need for an overhaul of how do we get access to capital for innovation, especially in these circular spaces where we can reduce the waste stream and add value to a lot of the products we're creating.
So do you feel that you get sufficient, and Russ, you mentioned a lot of companies may not have the research capacity, but what about the land-grant universities or the research funds that are available from public institutions? Could each of you comment a little bit about how you might work with those research institutions, if at all? Are they helpful? Do they need to do more?
Wow, how do I want to answer that? There's a lot of good work coming out of universities. I think, and I've worked in academia before. I understand the pressures that staff and professors that work at universities are up under, not only to publish but also to secure grants. The issue is that, interestingly enough, we talked about this in the car on the way over. A lot of times in academia, you're having to secure money for your own program, and you're kind of limited to the money that's available. I remember last year I talked, it may have been in this very room, talked with a group of academics, and I made the very controversial statement that there may come a point in your career where you have to decide between the money and actually doing something that matters. I expected that to be abrasive. But the reality is that the farming community needs the academic community, particularly with respect to trying to figure out how to comply with Ag Order 4.0 and nitrogen, regulatory issues. And all sorts of water issues in the state. There's only so much that a farmer can do on farm to learn about those things and to find a path forward. And so we need academia to do the research, the unbiased research, that helps us understand a path forward. And so I think that in the state of California, it feels like academia is more like a sniper. They're in specific areas doing some really great work, but it's the broad spectrum effort and focus that farmers really need, because our systems are very they're very interwoven and complex. So yeah, we need a lot more help from the academic community. I'm very appreciative for the work that they do, but there needs to be a mechanism where, frankly, people in academia need to do the work that helps farmers, even if it doesn't publish a paper, because it needs to be done. So that's a hard thing to solve and a hard thing to work on. But yeah, we need academia and their research efforts.
Elizabeth, do you do a lot of your own company research from within, or how do you work with different academic?
We do research from within and also rely on the academic insight or advisement. Some of it, I feel like there should be more boots on the ground. Sometimes I agree with Russ that they get a little narrow focus on one part of a business and don't see how they're all related, or their funding points them in one direction or the other. We would hope there'd be more of an unbiased and more of a research of a broad spectrum. So that's based on my own opinion, obviously.
Yeah, tell us, do you work with any of the universities as well, Justin?
No, I don't. But I was one who asked Russ the question in the car, and I was just as curious as you were. But one of the things I got out of it was that he was concerned with was, instead of finding all these things that farmers and ranchers shouldn't do, how do we, if there's no options available, are the universities able to do research and find options to help solve problems when it comes to these regulations? And like we were talking about earlier, it can be expensive for a farmer to constantly be doing test plots or whatever to do his own research. But when the universities can get in there and do it for us, I think it's wonderful, because we're becoming a culture of things you can't do instead of, but I mean, look, we're California. We're as far west as it goes. We all have a can-do attitude in here. So I like the idea of being able to switch solution-based to can-do instead of what they can't do. And if the universities can help with that, then I'm all for it.
Thank you. There was one other question from the audience for you, Justin, just about manure waste management on your farm. Can you talk a little bit about how you handle the waste products?
I love talking about that, because we are a free-range concept. Our cattle are in, pastures. We feed carrots on 1,000-acre pastures, and so even our smaller ones, they get down to 20-acre fields. We have a light hand on the land kind of mentality. We even neighbor, the Nature Conservancy. We work with them. We lease one of the ranches from them, and we get a lot of soil samples, and we learn a lot constantly. But we have because we are a free-range concept, we are not a CAFO, we're not a feedlot. We are just big, thousands of acres. And, our family has developed our entire ranch and based it around the carrot operations. So you can get daily delivered carrots from different rural roads, to access different fields. So we don't really have to worry about manure, because we are kind of the old-fashioned way of big pastures. We never need to scrape manure out of a pen. Cows can get up on a hill. It's all rolling hills where we feed our cows. And so we've taken an entirely different approach to the feeding operation of cattle, and not made it more of a confined situation, but more of a large, free-range, open-range concept. So manure is not an issue with us. We just appreciate all that the cows do to fertilize the grass.
Very good. So let's just wrap up with one final question here as we close out this panel, and that would be that we do have a lot of California legislative staff and members who have been reading, and we have some online. So when you think about the future of California policy, if you had one message or piece of advice about how you're engaging with the circular economy and how you're reusing and being more sustainable, what would that message be? And so, Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap us up here in terms of a closing comment of what you'd like to see as a closing message.
My closing message would be to invite you to come outside of a room and see it for your own eyes, because I can describe it, you can hear about it, you can see pictures of it, but until you're actually on a place like we're talking about, you don't understand how it works. And that's where I would make my message, is that come outside of the room, come see, get some sunshine, see something different, so you understand exactly how everything works together, and maybe together we can come up with a better idea of how to do things.
Russ?
Yeah, I think the message that I would leave with legislators and their staff is that you can't do this anywhere else in the country. I've farmed in the Southeast, in the Mississippi Delta, the Pacific Northwest. I've been to the Midwest. You absolutely cannot pick up what we're doing in California and put it anywhere else. So it's important to talk about sustainability on individual farms, but as a legislator, I think that that's something that is very healthy, is to think about sustainability of the food system in general in the United States. And so be friendly to farmers. They're not only helping your local economy and providing healthy food, we're upholding a nation. Food production in California is not just a good thing, it is also a matter of national security. So that's what I would end on.
Thank you. I'll let you wrap up here, Justin.
I don't know that I have a whole lot to say to the legislators, but if I did, I feel like the number one thing is don't forget about all the thousands and thousands of people that wake up every morning before the sun comes up and put their work boots on. Because they're easy to forget about, but they're the ones making sure that you're fed, that the grocery stores are full, and that there is constant innovation. And believe me, we are all trying to cut costs to make food cheaper. And, sometimes you might not see that in a grocery store or whatever we're doing. But I would hope that the legislators could think about that as well, from not only the people that put their work boots on to the people that are having to pull out their wallets and buy groceries. Regulation is such a big issue that if you're going to regulate something, let's make sure that there's positive outcome instead of negative, because there can be unforeseen circumstances that could negatively impact it. So I feel like, like Russ said, be friendly to the farmers, be friendly to the ranchers, and before you make a decision or cast a vote, make sure that you have their best interest at heart.
Thank you, and please join me in thanking our panelists today for this discussion.